Yes.
Excellent. I just want to welcome you all here. I assume, I don't know if there's another regional services meeting for the end of the year, but I think this is probably the last one, isn't it? Committee meeting. So yeah,
we might sneak another
so
one in.
there's a wee bit to do. There's some important parts to get through. Notably, we've got two long-serving council staff that are leaving, so I'll make some mention. Try not to embarrass them later on, but it's quite a significant moment for the committee anyway. Contribution, but we'll get to that later. So, any apologies? I don't have any here. But sing out, please. Apologies. No? Okay. Well, I'm not going to pass those because there's no apology. So we'll just go to 3 declarations of interest. Nothing on you. Okay. Rightio. Public forum, petitions, deputations. Well. We're picking up the pace here.
Breakdancing.
Item 5, we're just going to look at the minutes now from the previous meeting. I guess everyone's had a chance to have a look at those. Any comments on those? I've got a couple of things. In the last meeting, there was 3 questions, and although it's not on the agenda that they've been addressed, there is an opportunity to address those through the meetings. Is that right? Through the course of the meeting? Yep. So we'll do that as we go on. Can I introduce those, Lucy? Would that be appropriate as we go through the presentations? I think I'll just briefly go over them. Oh, we can all see them here. Question 1, 2, and 3. So there was also coming out of that a suggestion regarding to the Bluff haul-out facility that maybe there was some interested people in the committee to go out when the time's right to go down there as a bit of a field trip and actually have a look at the issues on the ground and try and promote that work. Because it's becoming really clear that that facility will act as the first line of defence for Fiordland, where we've spent a huge amount of resource and money and effort in protecting that place. So if we could go down there when the time is right, when the staff believe it's right, I think we should to promote that work and just make sure that continues on. So, okay, we'll address these questions as we go through the meeting. Is anything else to do with the minutes? Anything a bit odd there? Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Give a seconder for that. That'd be John. Okay, all those in favour? Aye. It's carried, thank you very much. Okay, so notification of any extraordinary items, urgent business. Nothing urgent, extraordinary, not seeing anything around the room, that's good. So then we move to questions. Now we do have one question, but it's not on the agenda. It was probably a question from Councillor Rodway that came in a wee bit late, but I've got it here in front of me. And has anyone else? It come through on the emails. I've got it in front of me here. I'm not going to read it out, but it was well put together and with some illustrations on the back. So, Morris, if you'd like to, speak to your question or raise your question, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so this, I think is fairly self-explanatory. I don't know staff or anybody else have too much time to think about this, but it did seem to me to be a rather undesirable situation where the land belongs to, was administered by DOC. It is being farmed, dairy farmer in the area. The fence has been washed away because the bank's eroded into it. But the question really was, I suppose this council really, the question might be that we can't do anything about it anyway, because it's nothing to do with us, but it does seem to me that we could advocate to the department that these sorts of bits of land really shouldn't be farmed, because we are trying to improve water quality, and clearly this situation doesn't help that. So obviously my question is there anything we can, first of all, is there anything that we should do about this? And secondly, if so, what could we do? Should we do something about it? Should we not worry about it? Or should we be concerned about it? And if so, what could we do?
I think it's a good question. We'll have some discussion on it, but I think Lucy, you might want to comment on
Thank you, Chair. Just,
a possible answer.
so just quickly, off the back of your email, Councillor, Don Rule forwarded on to Donna Ferguson from a compliance perspective to follow up, and we haven't got the information back from that yet, but that's in specific reference to your question. In terms of the broader what we can do, I can come back to you with more specifics once Donna's undertaken and looking into the specific case.
Thank you. Yes, I did forward it to the Department of Conservation. I haven't heard back from them yet either.
We'll come back to you.
Thank you.
There's a few questions lining up. John.
Yeah, look, this isn't a isolated case. Look, there's plenty of cases where dockland is actually in the centre of some farms, and this is a discussion or a challenge that's been going on for decades. And the issue we have is the farmer walks away, no one maintains it, no one has weed control. So understand your concerns, and I guess it's a challenge of how do we have this land as pest management and weed management continue if the farmer walks away, because it shouldn't be up to the farmer to fund that out of his pocket for no reason. So I guess we just need to, it's quite a big discussion. So support what
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Jeremy, there now.
I mean, probably from our concern is you don't want fences in the river. It's going to be that's probably great, but the reality is this is from a land point of view. This is dock. They need to sort it out. It's not our issue. Like farmers have got land down the river, so they're allowed to farm. If it's up to who owns the land and things like that, well, the owners need to sort it out. It's not against the law to farm to the river as such, if there's ownership there, but I'd be more concerned if all the fences are heading down the river and causing issues. That's our department, was about the river and contaminants and bits and pieces.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, there's one of the reasons why it's a little bit complicated is, as Councillor Pemberton's alluded to, this isn't the only one of these sorts of areas. So the intention from staff was to look into the specific one that you've raised, Councillor Rodway, and then I think a broader conversation about how we can liaise with the department about land that they own, to Councillor Pemberton's point, and to Councillor McPhail's point, this specific incident is concerning because of the fencing.
It's not a good look, is it? So we've got Al, Paul, and then John. In Nicole.
I'm sorry, but often when you the farms are for sale, the actual dockland is listed as being owned by the farmers, and when they search the titles, they find it's not, but it's a common thing. Just repeating what John's saying.
Thank you. I did reply to Maris regarding this, and I've had some experience with not only dockland but administered land with regards to clearance or taken over by farming operations. A lot of times they can be leased for a nominal amount off docklands on a long-term agreement. So we need to be very careful and mindful around the fact that this land is not ours, it's Department of Conservation's, and they can do with it what they want, I suppose, to a certain extent. I do understand the fact of fences going into the river, but I can imagine it could have been quite brackish land, it may have been affecting the farm or even neighbouring farms downstream. So there's got to be some positives from this, as well as, the query or question around if it's suitable for farming or not. Department of Conservation may look at this individual case and say, look, the land is actually being administered by the farmer in a better condition than what we currently could have done, and leave it at that. We don't know. So no, it's there are multiple instances of this, and we all see the long straights where trains used to go down beside roads, and the farmers' fences used to be a chain or more, or a couple of chain off the road, and all those fences have come right out to the road, and that's why there's power poles down the paddocks. So, you know, boundaries move, but it'll be good for Doc to understand who's doing that and sort of go from there, I would say.
Very good. So we've got John and then Nicola.
Probably just a comment on the fence thing. Probably to appreciate it's been a reasonably good flush on the rivers lately. I've come across a fence on my property yesterday. I had to drag out of the river. On my property, lost another 3 metres. As a council, we are reasonably hands-off on land protection, what we were a decade ago. So probably just be mindful that we are casting comments around fences versus what land's being lost is probably not the honest argument I feel being.
Yes, probably similar points. The arrangements in the past, probably not so much dairy cows, but to actually keep some of that stuff tidy. The other question in my mind is the King's Chain fixed? It may well, with the river moved, but there's some questions here need to actually be answered. But without having those answers, it's pretty hard to make any other comment. But a good conversation to have. I know in my own case, we found recently that the original surveyor was normally quite good, put the Alton Creek on a straight line, and I've lost 10 hectares. I'm still grazing it, and it's on my title, but a change can affect that sort of thing. So it's a complex area.
Certainly is a complex area, and I know, especially with the department, people have made excuses for them saying that they're not adequately funded and they've got lots of land. Well, join the club. I would think for a lot of people today, around profitability and funding, we all have these constraints, don't we? But anyway, good discussion. Thanks very much, Morris, for your question. Can we move on to the next item? Chairman and councillors' reports. So I've got none really of note. Anyone else? Oh, here.
Thank you. Councillor Pemberton. Pemberton and I attended a bit of a constituent issue out at Wyndham with staff, where a walkway had been established by locals along a flood bank, which was private property and was a bit of a health and safety risk to a person training horses. We examined the flood bank with staff. It was decided that horse access along the top of the flood bank was doing damage, and some provision is going to be made to restrict access along there. So it was a good outcome for the individual that raised the concern.
Well, that sounds pretty good. There's a lot of those issues that are cropping up all around South, and as people are more aware of the rivers and flood protection, and I think we've got to find a way to simplify these rules or bylaws so people so there's no ambiguity. People can't claim, oh, I'm not too sure, I didn't quite know. So we need to be a bit clear. So good work, Roger. Any other reports?
Just a brief one. We know that the weather has been incredibly wet, but I've noticed the odd place where cattle actually have been damaging flood banks, and it's a conversation about our bylaw. I know there's a lot of stress out there at the moment, but it wouldn't have been hard to run a whole wire along the bottom of it. And I'm not sure it's not the only case, and it's not a time we want to go out and stress farmers, but I think it does emphasise the bylaw around actually people understanding that they are responsible for any damage.
Look, really good point, and it's a timely point, isn't it? Because a lot of people, you're right, are under a lot of stress, and they're looking for every bit of dry ground that they can find at the moment. So thanks very much for that. So Do we pass those? No. So let's go to the main body of the reports. Item 9.1, biosecurity and biodiversity. This is a quarter one report. Thanks, Ellie.
Afternoon, everyone. So, through you, Chair, I would like to just highlight some of the things. I always find the first quarter of the year's report really hard to write and make it kind of interesting because we spend a lot of winter planning, which is really, really important, but quite hard to actually make into an interesting report. But since writing the report, there has been quite a few things going on, so I'm just going to quickly, and I'll try and stick to time, cover a few things for you all. So the first is, I'm pretty sure you're all aware that we've been responding to a possible wallaby sighting around the Te Anau Basin. So we have now fully searched the area between Ivor Wilson Park all the way down to Rainbow Reach, which is pretty much up beyond where the bird park is, all the way down the side of the river, focusing around the control gates. We've been on public land, so Department of Conservation, Southern District Council have let us on their land, and we've been on both sides of the river, so we've been into the national park, and we've been on quite a lot of private land. So we have been searching as much as we possibly can. We have had some trained dogs in there, so indicator dogs and indicator scat dogs that are trained to find wallaby scat, and we have had drones up on several nights. The weather hasn't been great, but we've done what we can. So we did find one scat really early on, which you can see on the picture because I know you guys all love my pictures. And that's had a lot of different experts looking at, and they're all said that has to be wallaby based on what it looks like, the shape, what's in it, it's wallaby. Unfortunately, when we sent it through to the lab, the DNA results were really inconclusive, so they can't say for sure from a genetic perspective that it is wallaby. But we have found absolutely nothing else. We haven't found any footprints, we haven't found any other scat, we haven't found any confirmed sighting where one of the experts has seen it. So we are 99% sure there is not a wallaby in that area. We obviously, if we do get a more confirmed sighting or we find anything else, we can go back in and have another look. The thermal imagery is really good. I don't know how well it comes up, but you can see the animal really, really clearly, and they can see what it is. There was a couple where they weren't 100% sure, so they went in with dogs afterwards, and it was possums or it was deer or something. So we're really confident that there's not a wallaby in there, but we'll obviously keep our eyes open. It's all been done through the National Wallaby Programme. So I really want to thank my colleagues up in Otago Regional Council who did all of the hard work, getting the contractors down and making sure that we have contracts in place and all that type of stuff. And they'll pay for most of it as well. So big thumbs up to the National Wild and Wallaby Programme. Not the Wild and Programme, the Wild and Wallaby Programme. And Biosecurity NZ and Otago for helping us with this, because it's a pretty big deal and making sure we actually have the right experts in to do it. Other big things that we've been working on this quarter was we had the National Biosecurity Education and Training Seminar. So we had over 200 people down here in Southland, and we were the key hosts and sponsors for that event. Southland put on the most amazing weather, and it was like 20 degrees, I think, even though it was the middle of winter, and some really, really great presentations and field trips, and it really just put Southland on the map in kinds of the things that we're doing down here and the importance of all that biosecurity work and maintaining the goals. So a really good way of showing the region. We have also been looking at, as I said, a lot of planning work and the possum control areas and working out what's next. So we've got 3 potential possum control areas that we're now working with landowners on as to, these will butt onto existing areas and will be, if we can get them into the programme, a really good benefit to the wider programme and the landscape. So we're just working with landowners in those 3 areas so that we can get possum control happening this year. In the possum control maintenance space, we've managed to get through, despite the weather, 18 PCA maintenance, which is absolutely huge for this time of year. And there's been a real shift this year away from prolificum into ferrotox, primarily driven by landowners wanting to be able to do feral game harvesting. But we're also getting really good results from that as well. So there's been a big shift in what toxins we're using and how we're using them, but cracking through the program. Big news out of the predator-free Rakiura team. Biosecurity work has started and there's been multiple workshops with people who go to and from the island to talk about rodent pathways. If we make the island predator-free, how do we stop things going back? So there's been some really good workshops happening in that space, which will lead on to some pathways work. And the operational delivery has been Department of Conservation have contracted in zero invasive predators to start working on the work, and they are coming up with an operational plan which they're beginning to talk to the community about. But it's looking like starting in that southern end of Rakiura, trying some things, seeing how they work in Rakiura and Rakiura's environment with the suite of tests that we have down in Rakiura. So it's really exciting and it's really positive, and hopefully in the next 12 months we'll start seeing some real big move forwards in that project. In the pest plant space, as I said, it's been winter, so we've been doing lots of planning. But you'll probably all remember that at the end of last financial year, I came to you and I said we've reviewed our programs and our pest plant programs are struggling, particularly in the progressive containment space, and we're not quite hitting our targets, and we don't even have the data on some of the species. So what we've done over winter is try and get as much data as we can and reprioritise all of those plant species. What are we doing? How can we maximise the benefits? So up on the screen, what you can see is all the red dots are known Japanese honeysuckle sites. All the purple areas are priority biodiversity areas. Now we know that Japanese honeysuckle damages biodiversity rather than agriculture. So we're going to focus on the areas where that honeysuckle is near to or could impact on biodiversity rather than focusing on where it's in the farming landscape. So that's the sort of thing we're trying to really prioritise to make sure each species we're tackling in the right place for the right reasons. So, we're also working with DOC and LINS on some more interagency alignment so that we're actually sharing our programme. Biocontrol, hopefully you've all seen that we have got consultation out at the moment on the potential to release the Chilean flame creeper leaf beetle into Southland, and then working with Environment Canterbury on a couple of agents for Darwin's barberry. Part of that has been working with the Ngāi Tahu HASNO committee up in Canterbury to talk about what the risk these pose from the Ngāi Tahu perspective. The consultation's open at the moment. Really encourage lots of people to get involved and put consultation in and tell us what they think about this. But if we get these approved, it could be a bit of a game changer, particularly for the Chilean flame creeper. In the marine space, and I think in my report I put one line, which was, I'm going to tell you about what we've been doing in marine. So marine, since writing the report, we've had 2 major trips go out. We've been out to Rakiura and we've been out to Dusky and Breaksea Sound. Rakiura, we've dived in all of those spots you can see on the map that have got little flags. Really positive everywhere apart from Easy Harbour. So you can see 2 little red triangles just on the left-hand side of the screen. That's a slight range expansion in Easy Harbour of Undaria. But Broad Bay is still looking clear, and everywhere we went up the east coast, where we were at west coast, we're expecting checking for Undaria, we haven't really found anything. So really good news from Rakiura. The trip into Breaksea and Dusky, we're finding Undaria just spreading again. Still, now that we no longer have Jobs for Nature project, it's spreading a bit in Breaksea. We're putting as much effort as we can in Dusky to try and keep Dusky clear, and even if Breaksea gets away from us, and it's beginning to work, there's still quite a lot of Undaria in that side, unfortunately. But it's just the start of the season, so we'll keep going. In the biodiversity space, we have got 66 environmental enhancement funds approved, and work is underway on them. At least one of them is already finished, which for this time of year is great. They cover a wide range of different projects. So we've got people making traps, we've got heaps of weed control, we've got fencing, we've got planting, we've got pest control happening all the way across the region. The biodiversity team's also been doing a lot of outreach, been done at the library, planting territory with school children, and getting out to as many different events that we can do. One of the big things in the biodiversity space, though, is that with the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity coming our way, we are going to have to change the way we do monitoring. And that means that we have to upgrade our monitoring across the entire region, and do it much more scientifically and much more extensively, which means that the small-scale monitoring we were doing from community groups is no longer really appropriate or effective. We've had a good look at what that monitoring has looked like over the last 20 years and what it's showing, which really isn't very much. So we have made the decision to stop that to allow us to focus on the MPSIB monitoring that we need to do. That is a bit of a big change for the community, but I think in the long run it will be better. We just need to work out some details of it. And very quickly, lastly, we've also been continuing with the ecological surveys as much as we can. And this shows really badly, sorry, but the small map has got every single ecological survey we've done since 2007. So you can start to see the scale, the amount that we've covered on the region. The big map is if you overlay that over those biodiversity priority areas in the same way we've been doing with pest plants, you can start to see where we've got good data about priority areas and where we need to be targeting next, and the bits of the region where we think there's biodiversity but we haven't actually been taking a look, and where we really need to be focusing on. So we've made some really good progress through the Jobs for Nature money to cover some really big swathes of the region, but we've still got some big gaps and some really big unknowns. So it's hard to tell you what's happening in the biodiversity space because we don't have all of the data just yet. And I think that was it. Happy to answer any questions. And I know that's a real whistle top of 3 months of work.
Thanks very much for that, Ellie. It's a wide variety of activities as usual. So we've got a few questions lined up. We've got Paul, Al, and then Eric for a question, and Nicole.
Thank you, Chair. All I really want to say, Ellie, is thank you very much for all the work you and the team have been doing on this wallaby issue, and thank you for keeping me up to date because it's in my backyard as well. It's extremely good that there was no extra scat found, because that was the fear. If you find more scat and you don't find the damn thing, then it just indicates that it's around. And the likelihood is that it's only one animal, if it is not a breeding pair. And unfortunately, we haven't checked over that land bridge, which is the dam into the national park. But you have. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's not good habitat for a wallaby, and the likelihood of them enjoying it over there or surviving would be pretty low. But with that wallaby sighting, at the same time, we had a sighting in Mount Nick. Has there been any information from our other region that, you know, you and Otago talking on what's happened with that? Is there any?
Oh, so we did go and investigate that.
Sorry.
Yeah. So at the same time we're in Tiana, we had a team and contractors and a couple of staff up at Mount Nick, and we've been through that whole area as well, and had some really good conversations with the landowners that are doing. They're actually carving in the area, it seems, so they're in there a lot, and there's no sign up there either. So again, we've done everything we can.
So thank you very much for all the hard work you've done, you and the team. It's been very good. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Paul. And what's the sort of vibe in the community there around this incident?
There's not terribly much vibe at all as such. There's not much online, and people haven't really talked about it. Other than a news story coming up on a newspaper site.
Yeah.
Not really terribly much.
Well, that's a good sign, I think. So, Al, you've got a question.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Ellie, you know, when you look at this, it's been a hunt of, you haven't found anything. But the other side of that, I sort of feel that it must have cost a lot of money, did it? 30, 40, 50 grand?
No, not that much. I mean, I haven't seen the invoices because it's gone through Target, but I understand it's significantly less than that.
So really, does that need to be advertised and sort of and say that it's coming in a ratepayers' money, which it may or may not be, I don't know, and just put people off doing it because your rates are going into this? Can we do something like that?
It's definitely something we can talk about, is how we advertise. I've been talking to the comms team around responsible pet ownership as well and other things. So don't release anything into the environment. Anything you release, you end up having to pay for it one way or the other. So it's definitely the sort of thing we can look at in terms of comms.
But if you aim it at the ratepayers, it's a bit of peer pressure, isn't it? Because we don't like paying rates.
I'm with you on that.
I don't know.
Maybe that's a good suggestion. Just picking up on that, Ellie, have we actually communicated in the media around fines for this sort of thing, like people transporting geese like this?
No, I think when we did the prosecution under the Pathways Plan a year or two ago, we did a bit of comms around fines and what can happen in the Biosecurity Act. I don't think we've done anything recently. We try and do the positive messaging rather than the stick messaging,
But it might straighten people up just so it's not so much of a joke. People thinking that. Thanks, Al. Eric's got a question.
Thank you. What you said about predator-free Rakiura was quite brief. I'm wondering if you
sorry,
could
it was really quick.
a little bit more elucidation. So starting at the bottom end, and I note some of the TT Islands and bottom of the Stewart Island, what's being trialled in terms of methodology, and have we got to a stage where we say we're going to roll up the island or do a blanket or any of that work being done to know what the likely outcomes will be?
So the operational detail is still being worked through, and that's zero invasive predators that we'll be doing now. But the initial plan is to use a similar approach to what they've used elsewhere in the country, which is a 1080 to 0 approach. That's using 2 applications of 1080 across the area. There are things in Rakiura that they haven't had to deal with before, so the weather will be different. The exact suite of animals is different. So exactly how it works on the ground is what they need to work out in this first stage. But the intention, yes, is if they can do that stage and then they'll do the next stage and they'll keep learning and making it better as they go up and up the island. So it's really hard to sit here and say this is exactly what's going to happen. But we're definitely in a place where we're beginning to, like, this time next year, something should have happened on the ground. And if it's appropriate at the time, it's probably worth getting them to come and talk to you about their actual details rather than me trying to be in the middle explaining what they're doing. Yeah.
Supplementary?
Yeah, of course.
So if 1080 is the methodology and it's likely to be and has proved to be the most successful in other places, there's a huge whitetail hunter element.
Yep.
And what's happening to keep them on side, and has there been any discussion about deer repellent on the 1080 that's likely to be used?
Yeah, so there is lots of ongoing discussions between predator-free department and zero invasive predators with the deer stalkers. I think there's 3 or 4 different deer groups that they are working with and trying to work out what is the best and what can and can't happen in that. So I'm not privy to all of those conversations, but it's very much in the minds of the people running the operation. They know how important the deer are to some bits of the community. They understand what hunting does for the community, and they're doing their best to work with them to make sure that this is done in a way that's good for everybody within the constraints that we've got.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Have you got something to add, Estelle, to this discussion?
Thanks for the opportunity, Peter, just to support what Ellie's saying. It's things are progressing well. Consultation with the community's being robust, to say the least, especially when zero invasive predators released the media release with Te Pukerakera Trust explaining the methodology and the use of aerial toxins. So, but we've expected this sort of conversations to occur, and we're ready for these conversations. It's great that they're being had, and I don't think there's any game changers in it that are going to impact on the success of the project. So, yeah.
What about, if I could ask, in your own community, Bluff, as a quarantine sort of point, any comments on that at an early stage?
Well, I guess my comment would be that because we've had a project running out of Bluff for 15 years now doing predator suppression, the community, we have a level of social license and buy-in from the community of Bluff, who are keen to support the biosecurity pathway work, and showed that support by attending the hui that was run with support from ES. So yeah, lots of community support within our Bluff community, but of course remembering that there's a very historic whakapapa links between Bluff people and Rakiara, and not everybody's excited about the methodologies being used, but conversations are being had, and it seems pretty positive.
Thanks for that input. So, Nicole and then Lyndall.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite concerned about the Mediterranean famine with Mr. Chalmers and Port Chalmers. We know that Inderia got into Fiordland because the MPI walked away from eradication in Bluff. And in hindsight, that's been a very costly exercise. So specifically, my concerns would be the tugs out of that area are often guiding cruise ships into Fiordland, that we would need some assurance that their hulls were clean.
Please, you can answer that. Ellie, would you comment on that, please?
So that's quite a multi-layered question. So Otago Regional Council have set up a response for Mediterranean farm room. So even though they don't currently have marine pests in their plan, their regional pest management plan, they are taking this very seriously and working as though it was in their plan. So they are doing extensive searching and stuff, and they haven't found anything else as far as I believe. In terms of the clean hulls of things coming into our region, then obviously we've got the Fiordland Pathways plan, which people have to follow, and we will be continuing to check boats and check hulls of all of the small boats as and when we can, and keep doing the compliance for that. Then the cruise ships all have to follow the cruise ship deed of agreement, which also requires them to have a clean hull. So there are some things in place to prevent them happening, but the best prevention will be Otago managing to get rid of it, and which they are working on.
Thanks, Chairman. Just wanted to say that I've had some feedback from some constituents about the GEM portal.
Oh,
Yeah, and how much they have enjoyed having access to that and the vast array of knowledge that it's got within it. So yes, please subscribe for another year if you can, when the time is right. Thank you.
Further questions? Can I ask that someone move that report?
Yep.
I'll receive that report.
I'll second.
Thank you, Linda. And second, and all those in favour? Yes. Very, thanks very much. Thanks, Ellie. So we come to 9.2, Whakamana Te Watuna. Nick is going to come up and present that report. And just note that we too have our co-chairs here in attendance too. So.
Yeah, kia ora everyone, and yeah, it's great to have both the co-chairs here today. So just a brief update. I'll take the report as read, but just a few highlights there. One of the key things we're doing is trying to work with the community a bit more, so there's a lot more engagement around trying to get things going there. By having a community member on board with trust has helped sort of bridge that gap quite a bit, and it seems to be working well. One of the things we're working on there, which the community were keen to find out about, was around our monitoring and the results from both ours and DOC's monitoring regimes, and how we can actually report on that so that they can take action around that. So we've developed a lovely health scorecard. It's just a very basic thing at this stage, but it's something we can look at as developing further. It just takes a few of the key monitoring parameters that we look at and report some on a monthly basis to the local communities so they can take a look on that. And so far we've had some good feedback around that. One of the other key things is, so I've highlighted there, we have a new project manager on board, and I'm pleased to say we have engaged Sarah Yarrow, who's formerly part of our project steering group and lead of the Living Waters project, national lead of the Living Waters project. So she's now We're engaged by the Whakamanatei Waituna Trust in a project management role. She's there to help us sort of deliver on these projects. Also exploring other funding options and the likes, and to help sort of work with various costs in that. We're also working closely with William and Tara, and her job's going to be shared sometimes with them in terms of doing work with them as well. So you make good use of her time while she's here. In terms of our year, we've got some program of work there. You'll see there between colour coded there. One of the other things we're working on at the moment is a bit of a scorecard reporting thing to be able to update on those things. But some of the key ones there, amazingly under the Runanga Reconnection, they've been working with SIT to develop a lovely whare down there. I understand the building that's been done very well and looks pretty awesome. There's just a bit of logistics challenges in getting it to the actual site at this moment in time. Also on that front, when the weather gets a bit better and access is better, our partners with the Te Waiperera Trust are looking to hold a bit of an open day down there at the power site. Where we can come there and look and see how the programs are making. And the other key thing that we're looking at right now from the community thing is actually a bit of a refresh of our website. The website was formerly hosted by, and still is currently hosted by ES. We're looking at doing a refresh of that and seeing what we can do to
Very good, Nick. Thanks for that. It's not an easy area to be working. There's a huge community interest down in Waituna. There has been for such a long time, and that continues, doesn't it? So yeah, I just want to recognise that. So, question from John. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just looking at the work program there on 5.2 Webster Block restoration. Just wondering where we're at with the council and the trust and I guess agreement of.
That's currently Lucy. We're currently sitting with the discussions with all at the moment.
Yep, through you, Chair. So the advancement of the Webster Block conversation following the council's workshop back in July, I believe the workshop was, around the possibility for a long-term lease with the trust from the council for that piece of land. So we're just finalising those arrangements now.
Al, got a question then, Jeremy.
Yeah, John just flogged us.
That's twice.
Gotta be quick.
You've got to get it first. You've got to get the hand up.
Yeah, but what are really looking at there, and as you said, a long-term lease, Lucy, do we do that or do we do a partnership? You know, when we were up in the North Island, they talked a lot about partnerships and how they work in a better way. And then all the expertise out of every body joined to get a pretty good outcome. Should we be looking at that?
So through you, Chair, Nick might be a better place on the partnership side of things, but from my perspective, the partnership's pretty well established in terms of the trust. From my understanding, and I'm just getting to speed on the conversations that occurred prior to me coming into the new role around what was intended for the Webster Block. So I think the intention was by putting it in a long-term lease, it would provide that certainty for the trust moving forwards. So giving it that long-term lease, making sure that we're putting in natives and other kinds of vegetation that might take more than a short term to get kind of established. That's my understanding. The trusts are obviously, both of the trusts are there, the Whakamanatei Waituna Trust, but also the Te Poera one, with slightly different purposes. So I think the intention was to lease to the Whakamanatei Waituna Trust in order to provide that longevity. But one of our partners might want to talk more about that too, because I am just coming up to speed on things. And Nick will
Look,
as well.
I think with Gail and I have had a email from Kane today. I think we probably do need to have a meeting just to tidy up some of these things. I think everybody's pretty happy with the purposing of the land. But I guess some of our councillors around the table want to be able to keep some of those learnings going forward. We've got a whole lot more land, and whether we've got a lease or a partnership, what the trust needs is confirmation they can go ahead and start getting things done to get that underway. So I'd recommend we do have a meeting as soon as possible. And I'm just reading this, the next trust meeting, I'll be in Wellington. I see we've got probably a pre-meeting on the 5th, Gail, but I won't be able to attend that meeting because I'll be tied up. But we just need to have a good conversation, get this cleared up. I think we've all got the same goals, but if it's not clear, and obviously it isn't, let's have a conversation and get some clarity that can be probably ratified at the next meeting. But if a group of councillors meet with Kane and a couple of the trustees, I think we can clarify any issues there, find the best way forward.
Thanks, Nicole. Jeremy.
Yeah, I think just on regards to that, obviously, we did have the workshop and probably a few of us sleeping on it, sort of just trying to get our heads around some of the details that were informed. It would be good probably to have another week, just a session, just to be very clear where everything stands in regards to that. And we don't have I don't see there any problem with the development of the land to, like if it's leading on our land, but it's just the outcomes where if it's the rewards of doing this work, where does it sort of sit? And whether it's partnership or a lease, it's just, we need to be clear from the council perspective what we've actually decided in regards to that. That's all.
It's a good point. We need to have a start point. What's the council overall policy around leading on our leased land instead of just ambling along, is my view, and reacting to things that come on our desk. Where are we going exactly? We're told leading on our leased land, we're not ready to go there yet, I'm worried that we're making decisions that are pushing that policy, that it'll go in a direction, regardless of what we think at a later stage. So I can't stress enough that we push the start button on that project now so we can get some sort of agreed policy at the very top. Then everything else should fall out underneath that, one would think. So yeah, I would be advocating for that. So picking up on that discussion here, Jeremy.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's about creating a template that's been sorted out, and then we've obviously got cracks. There's other property around that can duplicate. I mean, everybody's happy and we can enhance it, so keep it pretty reasonably simple. So looking at the future.
Any other questions? I'd just like to mention two here. I just picked up the updated trust structure, which I quite like, and I think I'm just putting this out for a suggestion for an alternate in the next term. The trust is so important to the council and its functions and overall that I'm always conscious of a lot of knowledge residing with very few individuals and passing that knowledge on. And I'm thinking more of it from a council point of view. If that's something we could do in the future, is we nominate alternates in a lot of our subcommittees, and I'm aware of there's no reason why we can't do that. So Nicole said that he's not going to be here for the meeting, and it's about transfer of knowledge and understanding. So it's something for us to think about, I think. Well, yeah. If there's no other discussion, I'll ask.
Just one or two comments. We talk about the website didn't allow enough scale. It was nothing more than the scale. It was the hydraulics were going to be highly expensive, and we thought of some learnings, but it was really, in the end, the cost was too great, and so that's why the second option has come up. But when you look at the work streams, there's some really, like Turn has always been a test bed, which the whole region will get benefit out of it. At the end of the day, And I see we've got a PhD student talking about rewetting of peats, and that was quite topical after listening to the national station interview this morning. But even on the alternate, I'll talk to my co-chair, but I don't think there'll be a problem with somebody like John sitting in my place and just at least listening. I mean, you know, I guess we are conscious that as people leave after a long time, somebody's got to have a bit of a step up.
Yes.
But I'll talk to Gail if she's happy about that. We can perhaps have somebody sit in.
Nick, you just wanted to say something then?
Oh, just on that PhD thing there, yeah, sorry, I missed that. Since putting this paper together, the trust have actually decided to drop that particular one because once we tried to get hold of the person, they were interested, and Kane's been trying multiple occasions to still get hold of them, and they didn't contact back again, so.
That was the story.
We don't know where they're at, so the trust made the decision to actually let's repurpose those funds later on.
Thanks for coming in, Nick, and it's like I just say it like at the start too, but it is a difficult area. I'm really pleased that you've got someone from the local farming community sitting on the group now. I think that's a really big achievement, and things have the possibility always to go a bit off the rails down there in Waituna, but you just get them back on the rails and you move forward, and it seems to be the trust, doesn't it? So it's not easy, but there's some good wins. Yes, Lucy wants to.
Just very quickly through you, Chair, thanks. So just to be very clear about the actions from here on this one, we'll set up a meeting in the first instance to ensure that the trust have confirmation of the council's intent to move forwards with the Webster block, but what that looks like needs further discussion, and so a workshop with council and Te Marama probably too, in terms of how it connects to the broader conversation about leading on our land. That was what I took. I've looked forward in some dates, and Rachel and I will work some magic and see if we can slot in a leading on our land update in the near future in terms of workshop schedule.
I think the committee would like to see some prior decisions first before we. But anyway, that's good. Someone move that report, please. Jeremy, thank you.
I'll second it.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, that's carried. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Okay, so going to 9.3, catchment integration divisional update. Fiona.
Kia ora tātou.
Very good. I'm just going to stop you there before you get, you know this is coming, don't you? So I just firstly, this is what I spoke to at the start of the meeting. There's two big things we want to talk about. Two of our highly valued staff members are leaving. And I haven't been around for long, but I've collected a series of notes from people that have been around for a while to talk about Fiona. So I'm just going to go through. You're going to have to bear with this, Fiona. Right. So Fiona started here at ES in 2011 as a senior resource planner, coming from Federated Farmers. Is that correct?
I've been consulting actually at SKM, but prior to that, probably notably for many people in this room, yes, as a policy analyst at Feds. Yep.
You're passionate about all the work we do, and one of our biggest contributor. Always positive and hardworking, Fiona brings energy, drive and vision to the team, and she will be sadly missed. Her energy and dedication to the team has been outstanding. You've forged many work programs, and I know amongst those work programs are ones that don't always have a clear destination and pathway, and that's some of the hardest work to do, isn't it? Because you can't really ask anybody how to do it. You've got to work it out yourself. So we're lucky that organisation is full of people like that can do those sort of difficult tasks. Particularly involved in riparian planting fencing projects, the Aparima ACE group, Mataura, Waikawa and Waihopai in these integrated catchment management plans. So that's just right at the forefront of the exciting future that we have as people creating their own future, so you've been involved in that. And we actually look forward to continuing to work with you in your new role as Beef and Land. I'm sure you'll be an expert in the farm planning there. So I just personally want to say I'm going to miss walking up the hall and because I always go to the IT department because that's where most of my problems lie. And you get down the hall and it's Councillor McDonald, can I help you? And then I get to a point that I walk past with a book across my face, but she still seems to recognise it's me. So
Change the book.
So I just want to recognise your ability and the insight that you gave the council, because not only your work here too, but you're out in the rural areas, you're mixing with people, you pick up on that, on the vibe of the community, and you've got a practical way about doing things. So I'd just like to invite anyone else if they would care to say a few words too. And I hope I'm not overblowing it, Fiona, but that's my intention.
Very kind, Mr Chairman.
Nickel.
Yes, Mr Chairman, I wasn't sure whether I'd been in the building longer with Fiona or not, but apparently slightly. I can well remember the pre-meetings before the water and land thing, and Fiona and I probably fronted one or two quite edgy meetings. You've been around for a long time, respected in the community. So you're doing the full loop, really. You probably take away one of the phrases I've given you from some of those meetings. Nobody died.
Forward and there being the staff through you, Mr Chairman, the first time I heard that, and I was like, well, that's actually perhaps quite helpful.
So you're sort of doing the full loop, and we're infiltrating and somebody with an environmental knowledge into beef and land, and that can't be bad. So look, really appreciated working with you over the years, and I'm sure the council will continue to work with you in your new roles. So look, all the best and good luck with your new role. And thanks for all you've done.
Thank you.
Linda, would you like to say?
Thanks, Chairman. Just have to say that I think the first time I kind of saw you in action was at a River Liaison Committee Chairs meeting. And to be fair, I had great admiration for the way you were able to facilitate difficult conversations with a range of personalities, shall we say. And so I've always been impressed by the way your ability to articulate the situation and the issues rather than the personalities. So I appreciate all the work you did in that space, and we're getting there now with the next lot of staff in that space. So and your oversight of the education program, of course, because it's dear to my heart. So appreciate that too, and just having the opportunity to bend your ear when I was also walking down the corridor to the IT department.
She'll have to hand on my eyes to someone else.
And periodically I get, is that a councillor lurking in the hallway? Yes. But yeah, really appreciated being able to have a chat with you about stuff. It was vexing me at times too, so good luck.
Jeremy.
Look, I've thoroughly enjoyed your conversations at time, and I appreciate your honesty. I think you're the only one, I think it's said twice, can you just be a wee bit more positive about things? And I often try to smile, but my mind's saying something else because of that. But I like those discussions because it's quite blunt, and sometimes need to have blunt discussions around rules and things. But look, we're not losing you to the South Link scenario, so you're still fully involved in what we're doing and things. So all the best for the future. No doubt you'll be probably saying keeps positive, albeit maybe the industry you're going to work for might be interesting one day. Go to, but yes.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy. Just before we go to the item, I've got Morris, but any other staff members too indicate, please, if they'd like to say something. Morris.
I don't want to prolong it too much. Squirming there a little bit.
Things will start coming out.
The truth. I she started working for Feds, replacing a person before her who had not nearly as many skills and good qualities as you. That was very good, and I was very proficient game. And I know Fiona and her family personally through kayaking, and Clark, her husband, was a keen kayaker as well, and used to go to Mabora Lakes, and we even had some slalom kayaks at their place on the Aparima River. So sorry to see you go, but I'm sure you'll be continuing to do good work, and no doubt we will still see you around.
Thank you, Morris. Yeah, we had great in one of those habitat ponds. Actually, we had Christmas events with the kayaks and had canoe polo events. Yeah, it's great fun. Kids still remember it. Yeah.
Thanks, Marcus. Rachel.
Thank you for the opportunity to offer a couple of words. So what people may not realise is that Fiona's first role in Environment South Fund was actually backfilling my role when I went on maternity leave, and we were so fortunate that we were able to keep Fiona on board. And back in those days, we had a big program of work going called Water and Land 2020 and Beyond. And we've made it beyond.
That's right.
And still working on achieving those community aspirations, but there was a lot of really neat work done. The focus activities may resonate with some of you, but it was nice to see Fiona transition from the policy and planning space where we were looking at those focus activities into the operational space where she was out working with the community on focus activity farm plans and actually getting some runs on the board. So just an amazing person out in the community, such great linkages, and I'm pleased that we're going to have that linkage through to be strengthened. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. If there's no one else to say some, Rebecca, please come on up.
I just want to thank you for Fiona for all the hard work that we've done across all of the together on that with Te Awarama over the years. So those people who were standing in my place before me, and we met through STC and around 2011 time when I first started. But yeah, I just wanted to say ngā mihi. We really appreciated your heart and your passion for progressing all of the programs that we've worked together on, and we really look forward to continuing our connections into the new space and in the new kaupapa with Beacon Lamb, and nothing that you've invested in this space will be wasted, and I just love that you recapitalising the Royal Land across
Thank you very much. So look, just bring me down a wee bit. We've got some business.
And the only thing I will comment on, Nicole might remember, I'm not sure who else was there, but I'll never forget, and actually I was discussing this earlier today, because there's a photo sitting on my wall where we had discussions around hill country erosion. I think it was back in the sort of 2013 era, and that was part of Water and Land 2020 that we were doing that work. And I'll never forget, one of the things I'll never forget is arriving at Gore, actually, at the Croydon Lodge for a meeting, where we, like, notably down the back of the room, there were 25 cups of tea, like set up cups and saucers to have a cup of tea for, you know, what we thought would turn up to a council meeting. And at the last count, there were 125 people who turned up at that meeting, so they were running scurrying for more cups of tea. But it was, it was actually a really positive meeting. We created connection with people there. We worked with people who were in the audience, and they were able to help support us in terms of our mahi. And there was a kind of a science and a practice component to that, but there was also very much kind of a how do we do this in regulations. And I think, I feel grateful for the people I've had around me, both councillors and staff. I cannot do this sort of work alone. And one of the photos on my wall at the moment, there's me, but there's actually a whole lot of people off to the side, some out of camera shot, and that's what makes us able to do the mahi that we do. And that's at a staff level, at a community level, but also elected officials who are all incredibly important to stewarding the work and the direction that we have for this region. So thank you. I really appreciate your thoughts. Right, so with that in mind, so we have a report, the Catchment Integration Divisional Update. So in truth, can I just say that the team are out today. They're deployed at Home Creek at Waimakariri. They are busy on sort of a series of planting days that have been happening now over a number of years, and I'll be heading up there this afternoon. There's a school there today, and some volunteers from the community, should we say, are going to be there tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to actually getting boots on the ground and getting some plants on the ground. The thing that excites me about that project also is that we have worked with catchment operations in that piece of work, and so actually it's a cross-organisational project. We're linked in with the Waiau Trust and others as well, so and some really strong support from landowners who I think might be coming along perhaps on Thursday night to the awards. So an exciting piece of work. In terms of the work that we've done, the couple of things that I wanted to draw your attention to, councillors, we're near the end of the report, the Hill Country Erosion Fund work. So councillors, I think, will be well aware that we've done quite an extensive program of work in the last financial year as part of our Hill Country Erosion funding from MPI, and we're grateful to them for that support. One of the outcomes of that was a bringing together of our science information around sediment, and from that we've got a report. In the appendix is a short version of a strategy that was proposed as to how we would work in the sediment space, and not just in the hill country erosion, in the broader sediment loss space. We know sediment loss is a really key issue for our region. And the things that I wanted to point out, I'll circulate round. We've got a guide here for managing hill country erosion. So it is obviously hill country, but there is kind of a broader context here. So I'll share that to councillors and Mana Whenua reps just for your information. And the other thing that's not here, and I think is worthy into the future of a really useful discussion, is sitting alongside the strategy when we designed our funding program, there's an implementation plan. And that implementation plan is almost more valuable in some respects because it actually starts to look at where should we focus our attention, what types of mitigations are important, and how might we deploy those, what kind of funding might actually really help move that work program forward in a big way. Linked to that, I will say, and this is so important for the future, is these connections, is the slow to flow work that obviously Ella is involved with. So there are crossovers in terms of mitigations, in terms of understanding the issues and the opportunities for interventions that I think could really be maximised over time. And the other item I'll point you to is I've just popped in there, kind of snuck in this, a little discussion about what I've called on-farm treatment options. So there's a lot of conversation at the moment. One will happen in the next item around funding opportunities, but a lot of conversation around the types of interventions that we can have on farm that relate to either restoration of existing wetlands, they might relate to construction of wetlands that are new in new areas, it could be sediment traps. And I think just understanding what those initiatives are, the types of improvements that will happen in terms of the different attributes, and then how we actually install those and how we put them in. And again, there's an important piece of work back to slow the flow, but now we also start to move out into our community to look at opportunities with the likes of Thriving Southland, Dairy and Zealand, Fish and Game and others. So I think just useful for us to be a bit clearer though perhaps on what these types of interventions are, where we would use them. And also I'm conscious too of what are the consenting requirements and how can we make those pathways easier. And it's just the last comment in terms of the report is the final section here on land slide, susceptibility in Southland. Again, so I've probably got a bit of a sediment focus today. So we have a report that we can share with councillors around that Scion prepared for us. So Scion did some work looking initially at the idea of the risk of slash in Southland. What they discovered, and this actually also comes back to our whole country or our erosion work, is that we don't have the same types of both soil settings and slope settings that you have in some of the North Island areas. So it's more around the woody material and the potential loss of sediment and woody material. So I think there's a piece of work there that needs to be lifted up and perhaps considered in a bit more detail and understood with a bit more clarity. And I think that's quite a useful resource for the council and staff going forward. Couple of things just to finish off. Clearly we've done a whole lot of work over the last 9 months. We'll continue to work in the intensive winter grazing space. So just to alert councillors that the agencies that have been involved in that process are doing a review of sort of the last 9 months, so the last season, if you like. There's still work underway and discussions around, for example, we need to, now that it's hopefully, now that we hope and look to more drier weather, until you jinx us all, we know that people will be busy out on farm preparing for next winter, and we just want to make sure that yes, they've got the right information in terms of the regulatory requirements, because there have been some changes, but we really want to focus on making sure we get good environmental outcomes, so making sure people are clear on those expectations. So there's a piece of work there. And the other thing that I haven't mentioned, which has been a big piece of work for our group division in the past, is farm plans. That's a difficult space at the moment, where because we are in this sort of hiatus or transition period and trying to, sort things out. We had an incredibly useful conversation yesterday with Silver Fern Farms around how they're approaching implementing NZ Farm Assurance Program Plus. And we are trying to work internally to see if we can shape up a program of work, perhaps not directly around farm plans, but helping prepare people for farm plans, understanding catchment context, having all of the base information, the maps and the knowledge around environment, around the contaminant pathways, so that when we're ready to step up again, that we've started to generate that knowledge in the community. We certainly know that there's difference around industries in terms of how that's being worked on, but as I say, the meeting yesterday was enormously positive. So just the one thing I just wanted to slot in here is introduce Leonie Grace, who you'll know. And Leonie, if you just a couple of minutes to respond to the questions, Mr. Chairman, that you raised around waste and composting, if I might.
Yes.
Agenda.
Yeah, I think your question, just to clarify, was around the farm chemicals, whether there was going to be an amnesty.
Yeah, I just a wee bit of context around that. There has been them in the past, and I was rung by a large agriculture contractor just expressing concern on what he sees the chemical build-up on farm. And the companies, if you need, say, 32 litres, they will give you 2 drums of 20. So and that builds from year to year. They just keep putting it out there. And this contractor's actually gone through and disposed of chemicals for people. So yeah, I'm just a bit concerned that build up, and he was really concerned he's seeing that build up now. So that's just a wee bit of context in behind it. So
no, that's good. I have heard from contractors that spray contractors the same issue. And so I've been in touch with Ag Recovery. So they run an agrochemical collection round, and they used to do a regular every 2 or 3 years, do a round in every region in New Zealand. So they haven't got the government funding at the moment for it, unless councils fund it themselves. But they're going to make an announcement at the beginning of next year for the next round, which they are saying is going to be in 2026. And in Southland, yeah, so that's possibly in Southland and hopefully in Southland. We're the next ones to be due the round. So our last roundup was in 2019, but they're saying that the regions with the biggest demand, the ones that have lots of bookings and the ones that are due for the next roundup will be picked. So yeah, I think we should encourage farmers to do the bookings of agrochemicals and maybe some potential limited council funding. Yeah.
Yeah, to that point, isn't there a responsibility for the companies that have make large profits on the selling of these chemicals to actually be involved at the back end too? And that's a point there too to be talked about, and I'm sure they would.
So the agrochemical scheme is like the other ag recovery scheme for containers. So they have brand owners and manufacturers that buy into the scheme, so they are financial partners in the scheme. So the only additional funding that council may pay is ones that aren't manufacturers that are part of the scheme, or paying for, I think the last round that we did, the council paid for ones that were legacy chemicals that aren't a part of any scheme, and the government don't fund those collections now. So yes, the other chemicals will be funded by the manufacturers.
Okay. 2019 to 26 seems a long time
It's a
between
long
drinks, doesn't
time.
it? Oh, well, if there's an opportunity to do anything any earlier, I'm sure we'll pounce on it.
Yeah, I think 26 sounds like the earliest opportunity.
And there was another question around that stock decomposting,
Yeah. Yes.
wasn't it? So that question came from a catchment group chair. And I understand there's a field day, I think, on the 14th of November in Dipton for an hour.
We have some staff attending.
We have some staff. So that will cover off that well. I'll make sure that chair gets to that.
Yeah, and we have, so the information we have available to the public on offal hole management, which I suppose includes anything to do with composting, is on our website. So there is a section on our ES website on offal hole management. And that was, I think, a result of the last round of lots of slinky skins and dead lambs on how to manage offal, I suppose, sustainably.
Stick around, please, because you might get some questions here. Jeremy first.
Just would it be any? I'm just thinking about the chemical side of things, and just to find out what it actually costs. What it costs to run a program just for Southland if we're falls within an area.
I think the last time they did it in 2019, they had an event. So they did bale wrap containers and chemicals. And I think they were funded very lightly, like 100,000. And they came down and they had their providers like Plasmic came and their chemical contractor came and then the farmers came and dropped off. That was much cheaper than going around every individual farm and picking up.
Obviously, just if I can say, obviously the bale wrap should be, they individually were getting that sorted. I take it. Most people should be doing that and plan, but it's more around those chemicals that there are a few drums in the back of the shed that forgot to, the label was gone and you go, what do we do?
No.
I don't know, it's, I won't say what happens to them, but it's be better to have, maybe to have an option.
I definitely agree. In ag recovery, the only ones that do that, unless farmers engage a commercial contractor themselves and pay for themselves to get them disposed of. The other, I suppose, the alternative is that farmers don't buy the chemicals themselves and they use contractors to come and do the spraying, and those contractors will take the chemicals away. So I think the problem's caused with farmers buying the chemicals and then getting the contractors.
Well, I would add to that too, is that I know in a lot of situations is that the companies come on and assess a paddock or a group of paddocks and say it needs this, and then they just throw the chemicals inside the shed and the farmer doesn't have any knowledge, and then the contractor uses them and puts them back, and that's where you start to get the build up. So
But I'm just against that. So the companies are actually really good. Like the techs will go in and see what's in your storage sites, so they're not over. They'll work. You've got to have it all set up. How much volumes of each chemical. So there is a system, but it's probably those historic stuff.
It's historic stuff. So
tidy up.
Yeah.
We're going to be pretty careful around there. Farm insurance.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's probably something we could work in with our comms people.
Yeah.
Perhaps explore the opportunity to try and see the costs. I mean,
in the new year maybe. Yeah, we'll look into that. But further questions on the wider, John's got a question, but think of further questions on the wider report too.
Yeah, so just on the chemical, a lot of the times that you come across on chemical examples, every time I'm taking a farm, I find a number of drums sitting around the water. So maybe something around July and June would be good when we see farm changeover, so it's fresh in people's mind, or May when the people are moving off, because it could have been sitting for 3 rotations of shear milkers and such like. So that's generally when I've had an issue with it.
So yeah, I don't have a silver bullet solution. Either they store it safely in a hazardous goods shed until the next agrochemical roundup, or they dispose of it and pay for it separately.
Whether there's some comms
around management.
Yep.
Linda.
Thank you. Unsurprisingly, going to mention education. Firstly, really pleased to see that the other councils have come out of their EnviroSchools funding. That's essential. Like a couple of questions, I suppose. One is, we don't want to endanger EnviroSchools necessarily, but it's quite an expensive program, and so I wonder when we last did a review of it, and whether we need to be. I mean, I value it highly, so I'm not mean this as a criticism necessarily, but I still we do need to keep stock of how effective things are. So I wonder if there's a review and B, there are other ways that we might deliver similar work. I doubt it, but I'm open to suggestions. And the other thing is that, two things actually. One is that we also need to remember that education is not just about what's going on in schools. And quite often councillors are talking about comms and, what's the comms plan for this and what comms are we putting out for that. But actually that kind of dovetails with the education program, right? That's actually the educating the grown-ups. Future, we're working on it. Kind of future education, where the education sits within our programs is a critical conversation actually, because it cuts across climate change and all of those things. So just a kind of, I don't know whether you've got something to say about that. And my other point is that firstly, some of the original Waihopai planting up at the dam, my eldest child did one of those when he was like 7, and he still goes up there to visit it and try and find his tree. I think it's a different one every time he goes up there, but that's all right. The point is, he's got some ownership of that, so that's quite cool. But Mayor's Task Force for Jobs and Mayoral Forum have opportunity to advocate for some NZQA qualifications around some of this work, I think. If you've got kids who are regularly going out possuming or planting trees in these programs, then I don't know how we would look at it, but I think we should have a think about it. Finding ways to actually validate some qualifications for those people, because those on the ground, hands-on kids and young people, they're the practical people that we need in our industry. And if they can get, they can get credits for getting their driver's license, why can't they get credits for, doing regular possum work or regular biosecurity work or regular tree planting? So I don't know how, apart from Mayor's Task Force and the Mayoral Forum, we can advocate for that stuff, but I'd be interested in whether you think that's something that we could pursue. So sorry, heaps of things in there.
Can I just say that's a really good point. You might respond, Fiona, and Lucy too on that.
Yeah, okay. So I'll skate through you, Mr. Chairman. So firstly, always a good idea to kind of review and evaluate the programs, and also to make sure that we have positioned the EnviroSchools program in the best way possible for our region, that we're absolutely maximising the opportunities to do that. And, EnviroSchools program shouldn't just be about primary schools. I mean, we have a strong partnership with Kindergarten South. We have a growing relationship with secondary schools, which I think is really important.
And that might be the possibility.
Yeah. And then beyond that, how are we working with kind of some people refer to them as young people. So, those who are in that sort of 18 to 25 age group. So, and then in fact, the reality is that part of the role of a land sustainability officer is in fact education, helping people understand or conveying information that brings about perhaps different practices or new ways of thinking. So, there's no question about sort of your first points in terms of evaluating is really important, making sure we're maximising the benefit and that we are minimising the cost and the process side of it, if you like. It is definitely beyond schools, and we're very conscious across the organisation we do education in a number of spaces. The thing that I would say is a reflection on the education side of things is please don't lose sight of what we have within the education team, which are people who, dare I say, understand I don't even know what this word is, but pedagogy and curriculum and ways of kind of, so all of those are actually trained in special skills.
I can even spell it.
Yeah. So the pedagogies of education, gosh, I feel excited. So those are actually specific skills that we need to maximise and hone in on, because they are the skills that they bring, that that team bring to this organisation. In terms of the Waihopai, we've really focused on that in the last couple of years. It went into hiatus probably when I started. Actually, I remember with my day 2, I was out planting trees on the Waihopai. It went into a bit of a hiatus, and we really lifted that up because we think it's a visible area in town. We think it's an important area. We can actually bring groups to the space, and people can come and create that connection. And there's a lot of learning that can happen in that space. But what I was going to say is that we can look to one of my predecessors in Northland Regional Council, for example, set up, and I still have the posters on my wall, they set up an amazing program alongside EnviroSchool, so land management and EnviroSchools together, which absolutely had NZQA credits, was around fencing, was around pest control, was around riparian planting. And so I hate to say this through you, Mr. Chairman, but we were starting to get into that space when Megan was with us, because she'd done a lot of that work through young farmers. But to be honest, we dropped a staff member in the education space, and that's the limitation. Either you have staff that can do that, or you have staff who can connect with external contractors to help design that work, because it's quite, again, you need to have the skills and space, particularly to link into the secondary school space. Yeah. And I mean, it's long been known that we have amazing young people come through kindergarten and primary school who are incredibly knowledgeable and articulate in a range of, the guiding principles, Māori perspectives, environmental, sustainable living communities, etc. And we need to then go into the secondary school space, which has a slightly different, a different environment within which we have to work in. Yeah. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, there's a lot in there.
That's very good, but that's really good already. Any other discussion? Just Morris.
Just a question about something completely different. The erosion control strategy, which is listed as an appendix there.
Yes.
And I feel that was written by what's the status of that report? Is that something that we are now going to take action on, or I think there's a few things in there that I would question. So I just wonder what is going to happen with that.
So that is something that I will have to leave in this organisation, and the staff involved across the organisation. So I'm not just within the land sustainability team. We'll need to look at actually how that strategy is lifted up, and then the implementation plan that goes alongside that, and where it is that we want to focus attention. It's interesting. What I would say out of the strategy discussion, and there were feedback from externally and also feedback internally from various divisions, is that it came from a very much what you would call a soil conservation perspective. It looked at all of the science that we have in our organisation around sediment loss, but actually had very much a soil conservation perspective. And that was quite interesting to me, because what was being advocated was actually great to have sediment traps and constructed wetlands and all those features, but actually what we need to do is keep the sediment on the land, is what's proposed in that. So I suppose it's not saying have one and not the other, but actually back into the days that I was in the archives looking at old farm plans from many years ago. Actually, those were focused on making sure the sediment actually doesn't get to the waterway, that we actually hold it in place. And so the practices, and these are very well known, become quite critical. I think as a community, we've gotten quite focused on nitrates and water quality, and we've lost sight of actually the fact that what happens on the land actually is what affects the ecosystem health. But certainly, just to answer your question, Councillor Rodway, so that is now for discussion as to how that will be implemented and what work programs will come in place and what funding opportunities there are. Yeah.
Lucy.
Just on that one and on the previous question too, there's going to be some change of foot, as we know, and as per your lovely farewells to Fiona before. So both of those questions of your education and where to next. Definitely going to be some opportunity for the evolution and the growth of how and what we do in that space in terms of other areas we might want to be spanning into, other topics, thinking about air, all of those other things. How do we lean into those and connecting to the organisational redesign with regards to community and engagement? How do we make sure we're strengthening and connecting more deliberately? So just to the first question there, Councillor Loveland. And in terms of your questions about erosion, Morris, same answer. I think we need to bring that back for a further discussion. It connects across how we are going to shift planning in terms of our integrated catchment work, and it connects to both biodiversity as well as the gravel work that Ella's doing, as well as other pieces of catchment planning that the council's committed to through the strategy and policy committee next steps. So a real kind of weaving together of things, and I think what Fiona has tabled here is a really crucial piece of the puzzle to feed into that broader conversation about catchment planning and farm scale planning too. So just more to come on it, I would say.
More to come.
Yeah.
And I just, before we finish and move on, I just want to talk about the Waihopai Integrated Catchment Management Plan. I think that's the leading edge of the work that we're going to be doing. We're talking about Hauora committees, all these sorts of concepts, you know, maybe those individual groups that are willing to go forward with their own planning, we could socialise some of these concepts, especially with the Waihopai, how flood protection could integrate with enhancement of fresh water too. So how that can work in together, so it'll be fascinating. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of learnings out of those. So I'll ask someone to move that report, if you understand. Thanks, Lyndall, and someone to second that.
Yeah,
Thanks, Nicola. Yeah. And all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's been carried. So next item to come up, you staying in that seat, Fiona. We're not going to. So
I'm going to miss you.
Yeah, yeah. We're not going to give you another round of speeches. Is that okay?
It's very kind though.
Okay. Right. So 9.4, the catchment integration. Report on land management funding opportunities.
And there are a number of recommendations here. So through you, Mr. Chairman. So I will take the item as read, but what I will just do is highlight kind of the three key things that are being discussed in this item. So what we have observed and learnt is that being able to have some funding available is incredibly helpful in doing our work. There's a whole lot of debate that could happen around that, but the reality I have found over the last few years is having the funding available is seed funding makes a difference to be able to do things. So there are three areas of funding, and they're all quite different. So I'll just talk through them briefly within this item. So the first one is the funding for the Mataura that has been provided by the suggested by the Mataura Catchment Liaison Committee. And they, some years ago, allocated $25,000 that they wanted to go be made available to the catchment groups of the Mataura catchment. There were some things that happened along the way, and we were able to reinvigorate that this year. And we have, in fact, actually gone out, and there are sheets in the back of this item just to show you what it looks like, and worked with catchment groups, and we have allocated the $25,000. There was another application, but we've had some subsequent discussions with that group, and they've now held off on progressing them. So the money has been allocated at this stage. Certainly it was received with a great deal of interest, and people are very enthusiastic. So that is the first fund. The second fund is at this stage what is nominally called the Constructed Wetland Grant. So councillors will be aware that some years ago we had a focus activity farm plan program. Attached to that was an enablement grant. That enablement grant has been, we redirected that once we had to stop doing farm plans, and we redirected that into catchment planning and catchment projects that we've been doing, and riparian projects. What we would like to do is reinstate that as an interventions and mitigations fund, if you like. There's a lot of interest around constructive wetlands, but not the only mitigation that's available. So that funding, that's the second area of funding, and that is an Environment Southland fund, but we are interested obviously to work with other partners and obviously in terms of working with farmers to use this money, to access this money The final fund is the Thriving Southland Fund, and so that has in fact been already confirmed through the long-term plan process, but this just provides some more detail to councillors around how that fund will work. And so that information is included in this report as well. So the one thing I would like to propose is that if you look through the recommendations, so there is a recommendation 1 just relates to the report. Recommendation 5 is that there be ongoing reporting for all of those 3 funds through this committee. And then for recommendations 2, 3 and 4, they relate to the specific funds that I've spoken of. So the Mataura, the Constructive Wetlands and the Thriving Southland Fund. And in speaking with staff, I think it would be useful to add in the source of the funds for each of those 3, if that would be possible. So that would be an amendment to the recommendations. So for the first one, the Mataura comes from Mataura Liaison Committee funds. The Constructive Wetland comes from Land Sustainability Rate, and the Thriving Southland Fund is from the Land Sustainability Reserve. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you got those suggestions, Ellie? Just that amendment that you talked about. You recommend?
Yeah.
Again? Look, we'll take that under advice. We'll have a round of questions and then we'll go through those recommendations. It looks as though 1 and 5 together and 2, 3 and 4 separate, depending on what the committee feel. So yeah, John, for the question then.
Just a question of thriving. And I'm just trying to wind back the clock to LTP. And being that I was on the board of Thriving, so a little understanding as to how it works over there. My understanding of Channel Thriving is the operational side of things, the funding. So are we attaching our funding with certain criteria?
So there will be an agreement between us. So if you go to page 39 of the report, and if you look at the bullet points there, so the panel will be assessing applications as follows, and the panel has an Environment Southland staff member on it. So the focus of this fund, just to be clear, councillors, is on ground action. So there might be some supporting work that needs to happen as part of that, but it's essentially we want the bulk of the funds and the Thriving Southland are in agreement as well to be physically doing things. Obviously, Thriving's had a lot of money to do gathering of information, not to actually implement that information. Yep. And then there are a number of bullet points there that the panel will go through in terms of evaluating each of the applications that come in. So there will be a set criteria around how that works. Yes, yeah. And then again, that reporting back to regional services. So I've worked with the team at Thriving Southland just to confirm and make sure this fits within what they know catchment groups are wanting to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Morris and Linda.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 1 or 2 things. The first of all, I think all of this stuff is really good. Right? It's really good. On the 10th of October, along with Peter, I went to a workshop hosted by Matauriti Catchment Group, and that was a presentation by the company called Collaboration that has developed the tool to identify places that wetlands can go on your property. It's fantastic. I've got a report for the next council meeting or something coming up. But this is another tool for identifying places where you can put wetlands. It's a computer-based thing and tells you how many nutrients you can reduce by the design of the wetland and the land. It's very impressive indeed. But at the moment, it only applies to the Winton Channel catchment. And so we talked about that, and Richard Kite was there, they were part of it, of course, about getting this spread out to other catchments throughout the south. And that would be the goal. But how to do that, I'm not sure. Obviously, there's a cost to that, but it's already been, or a lot of the software development's been done for the one catchment, so spreading it out to other catchments won't be so costly. But we'll talk about that in the future. But that's if that can be used. The other thing is, what else besides that? Oh, the other thing is a little bit of a look back. Sorry. The Mataura brochure, what do you call it? A picture on the front.
Yes. That has been said. yes.
You know, that's like Manapuri or
It's Home Creek actually, yes, it is, so thank you.
So it could be, I'm sure there's some nice pictures in the carriage.
When you get into the Matera someday.
No.
So through you, Mr Chairman, thank you for the feedback. Councillor Hookway. Yes, noted, it has been noted.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I might be being a bit dense, but my understanding for the LTP conversation about the thriving funding was that they were not getting that funding. We were not releasing that funding until we had approved the business case of the projects that were applying for funding. So is that what this is saying, or is that something different?
So what we were wanting to do is actually have a structure so that we have involvement in the decision making around the projects, but not the intention at this point anyway, unless I hear otherwise, is that there won't be, each project won't come to this council for decision. No, that there'll be a criteria that council agree on as being suitable, and that will be the criteria, the basis on which those applications are then assessed, and then there'll be a circle back every quarter to report on that.
So the business case that is presented is approved by the
panel,
not. So we will be trusting that the panel makes decisions that we like. Is it right? Is it?
It seems that's the way. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
There's an environment.
Yeah.
Yes, but.
And so the criteria, the questions through Mr Chairman will be, are we satisfied? Is the council satisfied? And if there's more work to be done, that's fine, but are the council satisfied that the questions that are on that page 39 meet kind of the expectations of from a governance perspective around this money, this funding? Yeah.
So only me that's not comfortable.
And again, it's how do we maintain an effectiveness and efficiency lens?
And we don't need to have a finger in every pie, but my understanding was that we weren't releasing the funding until the business cases had been approved by, and we were vague about who was approving the business case. I suppose.
Just on that, can we look into that about that detail, Fiona? That's quite important. Hopefully that, okay. Hopefully that
Just so that it's
won't
clear.
stop us from making a decision.
Don't want to get tied up in something weird.
So I've got Al and then Jeremy.
Through you, Mr Chair, I understood it was 350,000 that we had apportioned for them. 335, that's fine, I'm clear now. Thank you.
Jeremy?
Just in going against what Lyndall says, but the really, some of the stuff is where we've been too over controlling, and we've got to get that balance in. I mean, we've got Thriving that has proven, I would say it's proven itself very well to get things done, and this is about encouraging that. So, and we've got a panel person on that panel. So there's a wee bit of saying, let them do their thing. And I'm sure I'm not saying it still comes back, but there's an element of, I think, pretty comfortable.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to be questioning.
No, but I'm just saying that.
Validity, but we.
If any organisation we should be trusting is probably there out there. It's running, doing a lot of get on with it.
And through you, Mr Chairman, we've taken, in working with Thriving to come up with those criteria, we've taken a similar approach to how we've approached some of our other fundings, including each year our enhancement grant, where we have, if you like, a matrix based on those questions where there's a score done. So that will happen not internally. I mean, this is the challenge with having released that information, that funding out, is that we need to try and find a way that that can be $230,000 in some respects is not a lot of money. And the key thing I think that you'll see in that criteria, in those bullet points, is that it is to be spent on ground funding actions, similar to how we've worked in the Matara Liaison Committee space as well. The intention was for that to be, actually taking up some of the knowledge and science that's been generated through the Thriving Southland people and the work that's been done. And so, are there wetlands? Is there planting? Are there areas where they would like to try and do an experiment? So, yeah.
And the great thing is it's about the leverage of that money.
That's
money,
right.
and then they can leverage off other people, and that's the multiplying effect of it. That's the start, the seed.
The question around fairness and equity to groups is something that I think if we are wanting to give that funding across, we need to give some of that responsibility across as well. Yeah.
It's an upcoming question. We've come up against it too. Is that dissolving our responsibility and handing it to good people with good information They usually make good decisions, and we have to have that trust. And this is just the start of those discussions. A wee bit of anxiety we have as a regulator around these issues of saying, here you go, we know that you know what you're doing and we trust you. So this is just the start of, we can create the platform, but we don't have to be there micromanaging people all the way through that. So, so quite good. Nick, I just can't quite see you around the corner. You had a mirror there.
Yeah, no, just following on from what you said, Mr. Chairman, I think this is another example of a partnership model where we're trying to leverage action, particularly with wetlands, etc., rather than a siloed approach, sharing information, and it's not trying to micromanage. And I'm not sure how advanced AI's got with the photo here, but if you open the latest Cora magazine, there's a page advertising the new the hump track becoming a great walk, and the photo is definitely not on the track.
Right. Yes. Well, sort of that. I'll have if everyone's comfortable, we'll look at these recommendations 1 and 5, and move. If someone can move those first, and then we'll go 2, 3, and 4, and have a discussion on that. Thanks, Lyndall. Anyone? Thanks, Jeremy. All those in favour of 1 and 5? Okay. So then we'll go to 2, 3, and 4. We don't always have approve the approach, but there we go. How comfortable are people going through with that now to do those 3 together? And what was the pretext we had that Fiona suggested, or just
including the sources for each of the different types of funding? So for recommendation 2 would be for the Matoda Catchment Group grants sourced from the Matoda
Catchment Liaison Committee Fund.
Yep. The second one would be the addition of the land sustainability rate, and the fourth one would be from the land reserves.
Land sustainability reserve.
So is everyone in the committee reasonably comfortable with putting them through together, or would you like to do?
I'm happy to move those 3 as amended.
Makes sense.
John, Nick will move and John to second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. So here we go. Oh, we've got to change. Fiona, you're out of the hot seat.
In case we haven't said it goodbye.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Missing you already.
Moving to 9.5.
Need you ask.
Ella's coming up here. Catchment Liaison Committee. November meetings. Ella, when you're ready, if you want to, I don't need to make a big long speech about you, I hope. Fire away, please.
Kia ora, good afternoon. I'll take the report as read. So really just to highlight that these are, there are now dates and venues set for these meetings, or proposed, sorry, and I've just circulated that document. So I know that they're called annual general meetings, and this is the second of the year. So just a brief explanation that this was tried last year, and I guess in time gone by, they were at this time of the year. specifically to align with our annual planning process. So the catchment liaison committees are an advisory board to council. And in their capacity, they advise particularly on work plans and budgets for the river management activities, and to ensure that that advice reaches the draft annual plan that needs to be set at this time of the year. So this is why we're looking to move into a November time slot as opposed to earlier in the year. So the other point I wanted to mention was just that there's been quite a lot of feedback around consolidating these meetings, particularly after the last round, which were quite long, including long-term plan discussions. So on the second page of the report, the proposal is that the AGMs are broken into sort of three parts, but really the first two parts are the official AGM meetings, and then with an opportunity for a sort of open forum to invite other catchment matters or groups to report back on happenings in the catchment. Also noting there's a desire to sort of streamline the minutes and reporting back of those AGMs to align with the way that we report and take minutes for other committees within council. And we'll be talking to the chairs about that, as well as some other matters at a meeting on the 13th of November. You should have already received a meeting invite to the Regional Services Committee. And finally, the last sort of the next steps are then to put a save the date out to the committees for each of these AGMs and to get on with the comms plan for the AGMs.
I'll just leave a question. Will there be in the relevant areas where the government fundings come in and their partnership funding, like the Areti, to do a presentation by Randall or part of the catchment team on the works program, the proposed works program, or will it be too early for that?
So as you'll see on page 2, the sort of part 2 includes both a report on the previous year's activities for the catchment, but also which includes current activities and then future activities. So for those catchments, that'll be covered in those reports.
The terms of reference for all the groups, will we ask that they are discussed at the meeting, or who's adopted them, or who is yet to adopt those terms of reference within the catchment liaison committees? Do you know?
So there's been no change to the current terms of reference. Terms of references that are appended to the paper, they are the terms of reference that were set in 2020, and there's been no change to that.
Yeah, so all the groups have discussed those and adopted them.
Back in 2020, as I understand
did.
it. Yep, 2019, I think.
Well, it's quite clear you've said to be an advisory group, and you mentioned that at the start, and I think that needs to be highlighted. Some of the groups seem a bit unsure around their roles sometimes, and in a leadership role too. I think that's good to highlight. So, other questions, please? Nicole.
Yes, just a couple of points. I don't actually ever remember doing these in November, but it's a really good idea. It tended to be February and rush us into an annual plan discussion. But I'm just thinking about, sometimes we get criticised that people didn't know what was on, that the advertising for the general public, also invites to iwi, DOC, other players that are involved, just to make sure we touch all those bases. So at least the invites do go to everybody who could potentially come. You're always going to have a committee that are quite involved, but sometimes the wider public don't get as much prior knowledge that the thing's on. We would cross them over the years saying, "Oh, we would have gone if you'd let us know," sort of thing. So it's just making sure that we put it out as widely as we can.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So Lyndall, Jeremy and John.
Thanks. Just following Gemma's point, actually, but also there's a great deal of personal responsibility that could be taken for. If you're expecting a meeting, you should be looking for the information. my point though is whether we're actually looking at having kind of six, something else mid-year as well as a display option. You know how we, as you said, we used to have an information section at the kind of end of the meeting where we'd present some of the cool things that we're doing, or we'd ask them a question. Are we going to maybe try and slot that in mid-year as well in the cycle, so that there's a regular kind of mid 6 months kind of, this is, glorious, wonderful things that are happening, or we want to know what you think about this, just so that there's a regular check-in with them, because they often feel that they're not checked in with them. Don't do it just because we said we wouldn't, we've got nothing to say, but I'm sure we'll have something to say.
Through the chair, I think it's a great idea. There's an ongoing process of looking to how best to engage with both the committees and the wider community. They don't necessarily need to be separated from other communications that we're doing across the organisation. So that's certainly something we need to continue.
Actually, we talked in the past about having kind of hubs, getting 2 or 3 of the catchment, river catchment, whatever they're called, together and doing something. So maybe that's an opportunity to halve the number, but twice the big.
Could I just say, I think that's a really good idea. As we're doing more and more work in the catchment, more funding comes in, we have to up our communication too. And then we also have to find a way of getting some of our catchment committee members, and especially those chairs, sitting alongside us and taking people through the work, because we constantly get asked, we need more experience. We need some history and experienced people. That experience sits within those committees. So we need to find a way of activating those committees better.
Don't do it just because.
Standing alongside, we've got to try that. But we'll do that. So who we've got? John and Jeremy.
That's right. Just in regards to the advertising, the catchment groups, is it up to them, or is it us to send a note to the catchment chairs or whatever? It's a lot of people in the area. Albeit I've done it and only one turned up after 50 emails. So it's actually, they don't understand what liaison groups do too. So a lot of people, but just going to reach out to everyone, especially if it's new time. Just in regards to budgets, we got the template right. I can't remember. I haven't got the old last year's. It's always had an extra. I just want to make sure we only got what we need on those budgets with the chairs. Because often we've got an extra row that doesn't mean anything. In the past it has. I can't remember whether they cleared that out.
Yeah. As possible. We're actually proposing to have the results from the year past, the budget for the year past, the budget for the year one, and the draft budget for next year.
Yeah.
The draft budget being the one that's in the LTP.
As long as we're all over that.
May never be right.
I know, but there was a remember there used to be a row that just didn't really mean anything because we moved on from that.
Yeah,
an old budget one that.
What we have done, council, is we've standardised all the catches to be the same.
Yeah.
Started with they all get their own unique desire to have their own different reports, so we've got a standard format for all of them. And we're adding in all the reserves that they have underneath everyone.
John.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, I guess. We have the structure there that's in place. But what fascinates me, and we sort of saw through the LTP, is where the most of the money gets spent, we're not really having much representation there. And is it the time of day we're doing it? Is it the fact that it's larger landholders that are more invested just because of the fact they have more engagement with the rivers? Why and how do we get more engagement? And maybe the capital value rating change might drive a bit of a change there, but it's fascinating that we have how it's always when you look at all the catchments, it's always a stretch of river that's well represented in the rest of the Taraza Classic. We're lacking for engagement, and I'm not quite too sure how because we've got some big hard conversations coming up. How do we get them involved?
Great question, through the chair. And just the language of the fact that it's an AGM might even put people off. So I think we're taking the ongoing learnings from each year and building on that into the comms plan in terms of broader representation across the catchment. That's certainly an ongoing discussion of how we both how this work integrates into other work programs, but also then how we engage in those conversations.
Lucy, you got something?
Yeah, I just want to jump in. We're in a period of change, and this LTP is significant in terms of the amount of investment and energy that this council said you want us to be spending in this space. And I think that this round of AGMs and how we approach it needs to feel different, look different, and sound different. We have to be able to say, this is the start of a transition. The council is shifting how we are going to be operating in this space, and we need more people and more engagement in order for us to do that. It's not going to be the same as it was, and we're going to need more energy and more people and more interest. So I think it's just a meeting. It's just a series of meetings. We can't do everything in one series of meetings, and now there is just one person and we're getting some help. But how we do it and what we frame those conversations at, I think, will be really important, because we do need to start the community conversations that are much wider and are about more than what has previously been about, in order for us to do the next phase of floodplain management and how do we move forward in those different ways.
I think that's a really good way of talking about approaching the problem. And maybe an answer to your question, John, could be your engagement is relative to your rating, and that move the capital value could change that over time. We've got Nicole's got a question.
Well, that was my question. Are we going to be going out talking about changes in this next financial year? We probably haven't had that discussion as to whether we're going to go, we said we may go down that track, but we haven't actually. We probably need to have our ducks in a row before we go to any of these meetings, because otherwise that will cause angst. And there's still discussion about whether there's value in some of the changes we suggested. So we need to be clear on that before we start these meetings.
Just obviously, Doc, just invitations. It really would be nice to get. Doc are not the only ones, but there are other groups that make sure they have an invitation to these places, so it'd be nice to reply from there. So I know some areas are more interested in that than others.
It'd be good for them to attend.
Yeah. Just probably to finish up what Nicole said, I think it's really important. We know in our experience that suspicion just sits under the surface with a lot of the committee members of the council. All seem surprised, but it does. We've got to be really careful how we do things, and do things in a really as transparent as possible. And I think that starts with talking about that you're an advisory group to the council, you're a committee of the council, and just lay those parameters out really clear. And Jeremy talked about advertising of that, whose responsibility that would be as, would it not? And right down to the cup of tea and the sandwiches. So, yeah. And I'd take what Lucy said too about the headline talk like that, and maybe Lucy could get up and talk about that, sort of the new way of doing things. Or absolutely. Any further questions? Jeremy?
Sorry, just trying to drag things, but reimagining Mataura. Obviously, that's a major discussion, especially in that catchment. And around the liaison, I take it that we'll either have representatives or something, because it's going to be, this is one and the same of working river catchment, or the work to be done. So I'm just, we make sure that's probably hugely interested. I suppose, or whoever's involved in that, to make sure that they're fully on board or even be represented. I'm just trying to say, I know there's always, this is my local constituency again, but it'd be very important because that's a major topic. catchment at the moment.
That question will arise, Jeremy, or
Oh, no, I'll make an effort to talk to Nicole. Team up there. Anyway.
I think they've got a meeting on the 31st.
Oh.
Where it was meant to be 2 weeks from the meeting we had in the Ascot, but they delayed it to the 31st.
Maybe the talk around the clarity of their role within this organisation might clear something like that they will have representation. It may not be as direct as they'd like, but they will have representation through the council. Maybe.
Through your chair as well. I think it's really critical, today's critical to get the dates tabled and the
Yep.
content and the purpose tabled from yourselves so that we've got that clarity and we've got time to invite many people, lots of
Yes.
people, and start doing those pushes about what is it that we're going to say, but also for the team to start working on what's the detail that will be presented. And also just advocate again, as Ella mentioned, for the 13th. There'll be that pre-meeting for yourselves and the chairs
Yep.
for us to cover off a bit more detail with them as well. So yeah, so in terms of Jeremy's point, absolutely we should be invited.
Right,
I'll move that recommendations. Chair.
I'll second that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. So, we can either just go right through to the end of the public meeting, or we can have a break now.
I was thinking Doug sitting here, do we want to do?
He's on.